This is the Lest We Forget podcast, a historical podcast by Tenement Yard Media. I'm Gabrielle, your host for this episode. Most discussion around discourse among Jamaica's national heroes whose life and work was throughout the 20th century usually entails Alexander Bustamante and Norman Washington Manley as their roles as president of Jamaica's two main political parties in the 1940s and beyond. However, in this episode, we'll look at dialogue that took place between Norman Manley and another national hero, Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Marcus Garvey, then a councillor in the Kingston and St. Andrew Corporation, and Norman Manley, at the time a barrister who was developing a reputation as one of the best in the region, would go head-to-head in 1932. Even before that, both men would meet in a legal issue where Garvey was alleged to have been married to two women at the same time. We begin this story there. Marcus Mosiah Garvey was born on August 17, 1887 in St. Ann, Jamaica. By the age of 14, his formal education ended and he became a printer's apprentice. In the following years, he became involved in union organizing. A few years after that, Garvey traveled through Central America and made trips to Europe. During his travels, he started to ask himself, where is the black man's government? Where is his king and his kingdom? Where's his president, his ambassador, his country, his men of big affairs? Garvey went on to state, I could not find them, but then I declared, I'll help to make them. So by 1914, he'd be back home and alongside Amy Ashwood founded the United Negro Improvement Association, UNIA. Born in Portland, Jamaica on January 10, 1897, Amy Ashwood spent the early years of her childhood in Panama. She returned to Jamaica for her secondary education, and it was while in school at the age of 17 that she met Garvey in July of 1914. After co-founding the UNIA in that year, Ashwood went on to become the organization's first secretary and a member of the board of management. She was instrumental in organizing the inaugural meeting at Collegiate Hall in Kingston and also helped to establish the Ladies' Auxiliary Wing of the UNIA. Around this time, apparently, Garvey started to court Ashwood. In his letters to her, Garvey referred to her as my Josephine, where he signed the letters, Your devoted Napoleon, Marcus. Soon after, the two secretly became engaged. However, Ashwood's parents were against this union, and by 1916, they arranged for their daughter to return to Panama. Around this time, in 1916, Garvey traveled to the United States, primarily to fundraise for the UNIA, and it so happens that in September of 1918, he and Ashwood were reunited. A few months later, in 1919, Ashwood became the General Secretary of the UNIA and one of the first directors of the Black Star Line, the shipping line created by the association. Then, according to historian Colin Grant in his book, Negro with a Hat, The Rise and Fall of Marcus Garvey, on October 14 of that year, a man named George Tyler entered Garvey's Harlem office, apparently to assassinate him. As the story goes, Tyler burst into Garvey's office demanding an audience. When Garvey went to investigate, George allegedly opened fire, resulting in Garvey being hit once in the scalp and twice in the leg. It was Ashwood who intervened and shielded Garvey, thus preventing him from being further harmed. George died a few days after this incident. On December 25, 1919, a few days after the shooting incident and a long courtship, Garvey and Ashwood got married. Ashwood's best friend, Amy Jakes, served as the maid of honor. The couple then left for Canada soon after to further promote the Black Star Line and have their honeymoon. Amy Jakes was also on this trip. Unfortunately, marital bliss did not last as long as the courtship. Less than 3 months after the wedding, the couple was at odds with each other. Garvey claimed his wife was dishonest and accused her of infidelity, while Ashwood stated that this was false, as according to her during an interview with a Gleaner reporter, quote, success had turned his head. He thought everybody wrong who didn't agree with him. Ashwood further stated, I saw where he was wrong. Garvey's idea of an African kingdom was a geographical blunder. There are too many tribes, each differing from the other, that it is quite impossible to form them into a single people. Their views on the direction of the movement in the UNIA would add to the strain in the couple's relationship. Beginning in 1920, Amy Ashwood brought forth legal actions for a divorce and subsequent alimony. In August of 1921, she left the United States to continue her sociological work, but was back in the States by 1922 to begin her divorce proceedings from Garvey. However, at this time, as Ashwood got ready to begin her divorce, unbeknownst to her, Garvey got married to Amy Jakes, Amy Ashwood's best friend and maid of honor. According to Garvey, however, he had divorced Ashwood. In 1926, Ashwood challenged the legitimacy of this divorce, but on April 8 of that year, police raided her apartment at 3 in the morning and found her in bed with a man named Joseph Frazier. Garvey, who was in an Atlanta prison at this time serving a 5-year sentence on charges of mail fraud, sued Ashwood for adultery while naming Frazier as a co-respondent. All at the same time, he was married to Amy Jakes while apparently still being married to Ashwood. The adultery charge began on the 28th of April, and according to Jackie Ranston in her book, Lawyer Manley, First Time Up, this case was said to be the most assuming to be tried in that court for some time. Both Ashwood and Frazier were undressed and asleep in bed when they were found, but according to both people, they were working on a book. In Ranston's book, it is detailed that when Garvey's lawyers cross-examined Frazier, he stated that while working with Ashwood on this book, she fell ill and he decided to stay the night to take care of her. This caused laughter in the courthouse. When Garvey's lawyer, Mr. Khan, asked Frazier if he had helped any other married woman with their books while being undressed and in bed with them, Frazier actually named a Boston woman. Despite the drama of this case, both Ashwood and Garvey were found guilty of adultery, but no legal conclusion was made for the legitimacy of Garvey's and Ashwood's divorce. When Garvey was deported from the States to Jamaica in 1927, Ashwood was asked about this in relation to her divorce, to which she said, quote, "My fight will have to be staged in the courts of Jamaica now. As soon as my lawyers notify me, I shall proceed to Jamaica and meet him face to face. I am his legitimate wife. He has never obtained a divorce from me." End quote. The following year, Ashwood made legal proceedings against Garvey as she contended, quote, that he is a bigamist and that she is his lawful wife. End quote. It was around this time that Norman Manley, who we'll speak about later, entered the Ashwood-Garvey orbit. Jackie Ranston made note in her book that Manley's opinion on this matter is as follows. The law in Jamaica with regard to bigamy is framed on the provisions which exist in England, and after providing that the offence is committed wherever the second marriage takes place, contains a provision similar to the proviso in English law, exempting from the operation of the law all persons save British subjects. With regard to the question of instituting proceedings in divorce, I cannot advise without being more fully instructed on the facts. At the moment, I can only say that the question of domicile will require careful consideration, as well as the question of the delays which have occurred since the parties separated. It does not, however, appear likely that the proceedings in New York will in any way operate as a bar to the proceedings in Jamaica. Whether Garvey and Ashwood ever agreed upon if they were both divorced, we cannot say. Still, Ashwood went on to do work throughout the diaspora, which cemented her as a profound feminist, playwright, lecturer, and Pan-Africanist. Amy Jakes remained with Garvey and became a renowned journalist and activist. Garvey, after his deportation to Jamaica, continued his work with the UNIA and then in 1929 formed the island's first political party, the People's Political Party (PPP). In the early 1930s, he became a councillor in the Kingston and St Andrew Corporation (KSAC). While in this role at the KSAC, a gas station dispute arose and the local government got involved. It's during this dispute that Manley and Garvey came to a head. In the 1930s, a businessman by the name of George Penso decided to build a gas station at the corner of Old Hope Road and Oxford Road in the Kingston and St Andrew area. The issue, however, was that the gas station was built in a residential area. A resident of the area, Dr. D.W. Godfrey, lodged a petition to the Kingston and St Andrew Corporation, the local government agency responsible for developments in the area. Dr. Godfrey argued that the construction of the gas station would create, quote, a disturbing element and reduce the value of his property in that neighborhood, end quote. A 1935 article in the Daily Gleaner by Herbert G. DeLissa states, quote, but I, in common with the rest of the Gleaner personnel, believed that too many gasoline stations were being indiscriminately erected in the municipal area and that Dr. Godfrey had an excellent case, end quote. Godfrey's petition was then accepted by the KSAC, and over the next few months discussion would be had about granting approval for the development of Mr. Penso's gas station. Then came the morning of May 7, the final proceeding to the dispute. Monday, May 7, 1934 saw the largest crowd ever to attend a meeting of the Council of Kingston and St Andrew Corporation up to this point. All turned out to witness the decision to see if the gas station was going to be built. The Daily Gleaner coverage of the event said it had the quality of being highly dramatic and entertaining. The event started at around 11:30 in the morning at the Old Woolmer's Yard. In attendance was Dr. D.W. Godfrey and his legal advisor, S.R. Brathwaite and Aston Simpson. There was also George Penso and his legal advisor, Louis Ashenheim. Then there were the councillors of the KSAC, including Marcus Garvey and Barrister Brathwaite, who Garvey had threatened to kick just the day before. Also in attendance was the Mayor of Kingston and St Andrew, His Worship, the Honourable G. Seymour. Seymour had hired the services of Manton and Hart law firm to mediate the dispute. This law firm then hired the services of Norman Manley, who at this time was arguably one of the most well-known and respected young barristers in Jamaica. Norman Washington Manley was born in Manchester, Jamaica on July 4, 1893. Attending Beckford and Smith High, now St. Jago High, and Woolmer's Boys' School, it was at Jamaica College, JC, however, that Manley found his bearings. And believe me, Manley's athletic exploits are pretty important to the story. At JC, he competed in 17 events at the Boys Athletic Championships, now today known as Inter-Secondary School Boys and Girls Championships, commonly called CHAMPS. Between 1910 and 1912, he took part in the championships where he also played football and cricket and also boxed. In 1911, Manley set a champs record of 10 seconds flat in the 100-yard dash, which was unmatched for 30 years before his son Douglas, a student at Monroe College, equaled the time in April 1941. Now, fun fact, in that race, Douglas defeated Herb McKinley of Calabar High School, a future 4-time Olympic medalist and the only person to make the 3 sprint events finals, 100, 200, and 400 meters at any Olympic Games. Norman Manley, after making his reputation as an outstanding schoolboy athlete, won the 1914 Rhodes Scholarship, where he left Jamaica the same year for Oxford University to study law. Still, World War II would break out and Manley paused his education to serve in the military alongside his brother Roy, who was later killed in action. For his service in the Great War, Manley was awarded a military medal. And yes, this time serving in the war is also important to the story. Manley resumed his studies in 1919 and graduated with first-class honors with a Bachelor's of Civil Law. He then won the prizeman at Gray's Inn and was called to the bar in April 1921. And in that same year, he married his cousin, Edna Swithenbank. Manley returned home to Jamaica and throughout the 1920s made a reputation among the island's legal community as a distinguished young barrister. In December 1922, a mere 3 months after his first case, he defeated arguably the most distinguished barrister of that time, J.A.G. Smith. It was a few years later, however, when he defended a then 21-year-old Louise Walker in the murder of her lover Stedman case, that he was thrust into public sphere and soon after became one of the most sought-after young barristers in the country. Also, if you remember, it was in the same year, 1922, that he gave his legal thoughts on the Ashwood-Garvey bigamy case. In November of 1925, Manley appeared on the behalf of the mayor and the KSAC at a commission of inquiry. A November 10, 1925 Gleaner article described his performance as, quote, "In Mr. N.W. Manley we have a man and lawyer of whom this country has every reason to be proud. He owes his position to his own unaided exertion. What he has obtained he has toiled for. His character has matched his intelligence, and both have been informed by a great degree of modesty rarely found amongst the young men of any profession." End quote. By the early 1930s, his reputation became unprecedented as one colonial secretary said, "Whenever a man in this country gets into trouble, he flies first to Mr. Manley, and if Mr. Manley is already retained, he flies next to Cuba." By 1932, he was invited to be awarded as a King's Counsel. Manley's legal reputation and experience dealing with KSAC is important to this story, as this is why Manton and Hart law firm retained his service to oversee this gas station dispute. But on that Monday, May 7, 1934, neither Manley's experience as an athlete, war veteran, nor his work as a barrister fazed Garvey one bit. Garvey had somewhat of a conflict inside the KSAC. As I mentioned, just one day before, Garvey had threatened to kick another councillor, Barrister Brathwaite. As such, when proceedings kicked off on May 7 at around 10 minutes to noon, Garvey interrupted the mayor to clarify the stance of him being disqualified to vote, as he allegedly had a conflict of interest with Mr. Penso, something that had been brought up in previous meetings. When another councillor, Councillor Chisholm, doubled down on Garvey's relationship with Penso, Garvey responded, "I have been dealing with Mr. Penso for a number of years. If the councillor is asking that so as to try and embarrass me, I can tell you that you cannot embarrass my character. You have not enough intelligence to embarrass a man like me." To this, Councillor Chisholm responded, "All right, you can't kick me though." The mayor interjected and said, "It has been brought to my attention and I am advised by Councillor Garvey that you are not competent to sit and vote on this occasion, not on account of any matter that you have explained, but on another matter entirely, and that matter is in connection with the meeting at Old Woman's, and at which you invited a mandate from the people to say whether you were to vote for the keeping of the gas station at the corner of Oxford and Old Hope Roads. I am advised by council that disqualifies you as showing bias in the matter." Still, Garvey was not having this and said, "Well, I know the legal mind and I know there are always subterfuges to every instance or case cited. I am going to abide by your ruling, only I am going to differ from your counsel who does not seem to know that an elected representative always possesses the right to consult the people who elected him on any matter, and I am sorry for the legal intelligence." Up to this point, Norman Manley said nothing, but immediately after Garvey expressed his disappointment in the intelligence of the council, Manley spoke up.
Mr. Chairman, I attended here at your request because of the difficulties the corporation has been in, but I am not going to remain here to listen to Councillor Garvey making his offensive remarks. He knows nothing at all about law.
Then Garvey interjected, saying, I know as much as you about this. Mr. Manley then stated,
And I have not been invited here to listen to any impertinence from Mr. Garvey.
Garvey? Neither from you too. Manley.
I have given my opinion, and he has not got the decency and the intelligence.
Garvey, you're most irresponsible. Manley?
And you are a positive disgrace.
To which Garvey said, Look here, Manley, I don't care about you. You fellows seem to assume some right that is not justifiable in a social sense or otherwise. How could I be impertinent to you? What are you trying to bring to this community? In the middle of this heated argument between the two men, the mayor tried to defuse the situation. I'm not going to have this, Councillor Garvey. All I said was what council's opinion was. Then Garvey interrupted by saying, But how dare him call me impertinent, sir, when I have only exercised my right to say what I understand about the matter? You must be one of the socially drunk people who think that. Manley.
Look here. You're a loud-voiced person, and I'm not going to answer you in any way. If you insist on being rude and impertinent,
Garvey interjected again. You are not physically well enough to be loud-voiced. Manley?
Do you really think so? Then step outside.
And just like that, by drawing a line in the sand, Manley had enough and decided that he would indeed prove to Garvey that he was physically well enough to be loud-voiced. However, Manley did not even get a chance to prove that Garvey decided not to take up Manley's offer, stating, I would be sorry for what would happen to you. Then, the mayor himself decided to put an end to all of this. Let's get on, Councillor Garvey. You went out of your way to which Garvey would clarify, No, sir, it is he that went out of his way. The mayor? No, because if you were satisfied with what I said and accepted my ruling, everything would have been all right. Garvey? I would not be satisfied because I know it is wrong. So, as the mayor and Garvey went back and forth, another councillor, Alderman Anderson, had enough. I have not got any proper examination on the matter, sir. This is not a court. I want to hear from you, Mr. Mayor. I want to get through and go back to my office. And as history will have it, Garvey and Manley did not end up coming to blows. They did come close though. As a matter of fact, for the rest of the council meeting, they avoided any interactions with each other. And speaking of the meeting, Pencer walked out of the meeting when his lawyer, Mr. Ashenheim, made it clear that his client would not be reapplying for a permit, and KSAC was putting itself in legal troubles. This gave the impression that Pencer would be going ahead with the building of the gas station. In successive years, the debate on the gas station carried on, and eventually the gas station was sold to a British-based company. As for Manley and Garvey, their paths crossed throughout the 1930s. In his book N.W. Manley and the Making of Modern Jamaica, historian and a former cabinet minister Arnold Bertram said, quote, On another occasion, Manley appeared for a comparatively poor lady who brought a case against him, Garvey, in relation to an article published in his weekly paper. Manley won the case and conceded that Garvey made a brilliant closing address. He was witty and amusing and took every advantage open to a litigant who defends himself. Bertram went on to state, in the third case, Manley successfully defended George Mackey, a former employee of the UNIA, who brought an action against his erstwhile employer for outstanding wages. Garvey continued his work with both the United Negro Improvement Association and the People's Progressive Party. Facing tremendous issues with his health and finances, his influence on the electorate declined. He took little to no interest in the island's 1935 election. With the 1935 election seeing more black persons being elected to the Legislative Council and the formation of Rastafari around this time, Garvey's life's work was influencing a new era on the island. However, Garvey's challenges on the island overwhelmed him, and he decided upon a life of self-imposed exile in London. While in Europe, he said to a colleague, "I left Jamaica a broken man, broken in spirit, broken in health, and broken in pocket. I will never, never, never go back." He died soon after on June 10, 1940 from complications relating to having suffered 2 strokes. Due to World War II travel restrictions at the time, he was buried in London until November of 1964, when his body was exhumed and brought back to Jamaica. Marcus Garvey was buried in the National Heroes Park in Kingston, where he became Jamaica's first national hero. Still today, his legacy stands as one of the most profound black activists to ever exist. As for Manley, he went on to further establish himself as a legal legend, despite Garvey's attacks on his intelligence. In later years, he became active in local politics. By the late 1930s, he founded Jamaica Welfare Limited and became an outspoken supporter of the island's birth control movement and workers' strikes of the late 1930s. In 1938, he was one of the founding members and the first president of the People's National Party (PNP). In fact, during the island's first general election after adult suffrage was passed, Amy Jack lent her support to Manley and the PNP by stating, quote, "She would be untrue to the memory of Marcus Garvey if she did not join the nationalist movement," end quote. Then, in February 1955, after 33 years of practicing law, he became the island's first chief minister. According to Manley, "I have spent my life on many cases, and now I turn my back for good and all on that life and take into my hands the case of the people of Jamaica." One of the most instrumental persons in the establishment of the short-lived West Indian Federation, Manley held the post of Chief Minister of Jamaica until August 1962, when the island became independent from Britain. Having lost the general election back in April, he became the island's first opposition minister after independence. Manley died in September of 1969 and almost a month later, like Garvey, became a national hero of Jamaica. As we near the end of the episode, one has to ask, who would have won the fight back in 1934 if Garvey had actually taken up Manley's offer to step outside? Well, we at the Yard have our bets on Manley. As I said earlier, this man was a renowned student athlete in multiple disciplines and a war veteran. Then, by all accounts and images of him during this time, he kept his athletic physique. So, in our opinion, Manley did seem physically well enough to be loud-voiced. However, it would be very unrealistic of us to think that Garvey and the UNIA supporters would stand back and watch Garvey being beaten by another man. A white passing man at that.